Hello backyard vegetable gardeners, welcome to the Backyard Vegetable Gardening channel. Today's April the 24th, 2024, and I sure hope you're having a great day. Well guys, having a lot of trouble with the camera today. The sun's going in and out and we've got a lot of road noise, construction noise hereby, but me and my son built these Trough-Style raised bed planters the other week for our new strawberries, and we thought you might be interested in learning how to do it. So if you are, stick around and I'll show you how. The materials you're going to need to complete this build are as follows. 1 3-foot by 8-foot corrugated galvanized roofing panel. 10 pressure treated number 2 grade 2x4s 8 foot long. 2 pressure treated number 2 grade 1x6s 8 foot long. 3/4 inch roofing screws, 1 5/8 decking screws, 2.5 inch decking screws, and some 3-inch decking screws. And the tools you'll need are a saw for cutting wood. In this video I used a slide-in compound miter saw, but a standard circular saw will work just fine. You'll need a cutting tool for metal. I used a pair of hand snips, but a grinder or electric shears would be a good idea if you plan on building more than a few of these planters. Some safety glasses, a drill driver for driving screws and drilling our drainage holes. You need a 1/4 inch hex screw bit for our roofing screws, T25 screw bit for driving our decking screws, a 3/8 inch metal drilling bit for our drainage holes. Framing square to help get our structural members good and square, a speed square for making marking a bit easier, tape measure, pencil, and optionally a pocket hole jig like you'll see me use for our struts. To make things easier, here's a list of the cuts you'll need to be making. Go ahead and pause the video now and write them down. We'll need 4 runners made out of 2x4s cut 94.5 inches long. These will be our main lateral members front and back. 5 struts made out of 2x4s 16 inches long. These will be our main lateral members for the sides. We need 6 legs made out of 2x4s 24 inches, and we'll need to cut 6 end boards made out of 1x6s, each 22 inches long. We'll cut our corrugated roofing panel to 94.5 inches. We'll also cut 4 corner notches in our roofing panel that measures 1 3/4 inch by 4 inches. Optionally, if you'd like to dress up the front and the back, you can buy you 6 more 1x6s 8 foot long, cut them to length to match the sides. With our runners and legs on the sawhorses, we'll begin assembly by marking a line on each runner 45 inches and setting a head. This will be the location where we fasten the center legs. And on our legs, we'll mark a line 8.5 inches down from the top, set a head just like with the runners. This will be the location where we attach our lower runners. To begin assembling the front and the back, clamp one of the runners to the sawhorses and then use the framing square to both space the runner 8.5 inches away and line up the ends so that the 2 runners are parallel and square to each other. If you don't have a set of clamps, you can simply align the boards by hand, but I promise doing it the way I'm showing you is the easiest method that I found. With the runners now square and parallel to one another, fasten the legs using the 2.5 inch decking screws at each connection point. Using the framing square to check for square and the lines on the legs and runners to check for proper position. Now flip the completed assembly over so that the legs are pointing in front of you and the runners are above the legs. We'll use this assembly as our jig to build the other side. Place your top runner above the furthest board and your bottom runner above the board that's closest to you. Be sure to align the ends of these runners with the ends of the ones of the assembly we're using as our jig and keep them tight against one another. This will keep everything lined up and square. Then repeat the previous steps for securing the legs to the runners. Before we can combine our completed assemblies, we'll need to drill 2 pocket holes in each end of all 5 struts. If you don't have a pocket hole jig, you can drive in the screws as if you were toenailing. When installing the struts, it's very helpful to have someone who can help you hold both assemblies. But if you have an extra set of clamps, that'll work too, so long as you have at least one more to compress the struts in place during assembly. With our 2 assemblies secured, begin by installing the top strut. Just remember, our assemblies are upside down and we'll need to locate it correctly before we fasten it with screws. Insert the strut into its position and clamp it between the 2 completed assemblies, then secure it with 4 2.5 inch screws. Repeat the same steps for the rest of the strut. Just remember to leave off the top strut on the opposite side. If you install it, you'll have to remove it in order to insert our panel. Now that we've assembled our frame, we can take it off the sawhorses, flip it over, and place it onto the ground. Next, place your roofing panel on the sawhorses and mark your panel 94.5 inches and cut it to length. With our panel cut to length, you'll need to mark a 1 3/4 inch by 3 3/4 inch notch in all 4 corners and cut the notches out using a set of hand snips or your preferred cutting tool. Slide the panel into the frame assembly, ensuring that the notches allow for the panel to rest flush with the outside of the struts on each end and with the top of the runner. Be sure that the panel is oriented so that the corrugations at the top lays flat against the runners. If it doesn't, you'll need to flip over the panel. With our panel now in place, we can install the remaining strut and fasten our panel using the 3/4 inch roofing screws down the length of the top runner, every 12 inches or so. Now that we have our roofing panel securely fastened to our frame, we'll need to drill our drainage holes. Using a 3/8 inch metal drilling drill bit, drill 4 holes in the bottom of the trough, spaced in rows 12 inches apart. If you experience any difficulty with the panel moving when you apply the force of the drill, you can fasten it to the center strut using another roofing screw. With our panel now secured, we can begin installing the end caps by flushing the first board with the top of the frame and fasten it to the legs using 2 or 3 1 5/8 decking screws at each end of the boards. Repeat the same steps for installing the rest of the boards. Finally, we can install our trim railing to conceal the sharp edges. Lay out the boards on the top of the frame, flushing the outside of the corners of the trim rails with the outside edges of the legs and line up the short rails accordingly. Then just screw it all in place. Well folks, that's all there is to it. Our Trough-Style raised bed planters are complete. All we got to do is move them to where they go, fill them with soil, add some plants, and in our case, which is going to be some wonderful new strawberries. If you'd like to know how I made the mix to fill these beds, please be sure to watch the next video. I'll show you how I made this mix, filled this bed, and planted these beautiful new strawberries. And if you've liked this video, if you found it entertaining, if you've learned something, why don't you hit that like button, folks? It really helps us out. It tells the algorithm at YouTube that the content that we're sharing is good and valuable, and it'll push it on out to more viewers just like you and me. And if you like gardening and garden-related content, sure hope you'll consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. And don't forget about our Beginner Gardener playlist, which I'll have linked right above. If you're a new gardener or thinking about growing a garden for the first time, I try to add new content regularly with the information that I wish I would have had when I first started growing a garden. And that'll do it for this one, guys. It sure was my pleasure to be with you. Always a good time. Till the next one, hope you're having a great day.